and welcome to my tennis coaching and this very special live My Tennis Coaching podcast. I hope you're all well. And yes, we are live on YouTube for, I think, the first time this year. I've not been live for a while, but it's a very special occasion today. It is the 1 year anniversary of the My Tennis Coach Academy, my online platform. And it's also 22 years ago I qualified as a level 3 development coach way back when in 2002 in South Ribble in Preston. So yeah, 14th of February. Who said love means nothing in tennis? It's a date that's sort of a lot of milestones sort of happen in and around February for me in tennis. So I thought I'd go live, and the plan of action going forwards with the podcast is to go live every Friday at 10 a.m. London time, because generally I'm just sat in the car or I'm sat at home talking to a screen. So I'm probably going to do the same again today because I don't think there'll be many people joining me live, which is fine. But I'll just talk, and I've got topics that I want to discuss today. I'll have topics each and every week, but I just think the benefit of going live, one, I don't have to edit it, and that cuts down some time for me. But two, it also gives you, people, followers, viewers, listeners, whatever it may be, an opportunity to ask questions and stuff as well. So yes, pretty excited. I'm going to get going. I'm not going to ramble too much. If you are watching live and you want to ask a question, feel free to stick it in the chat. If you are watching the replay, just leave a comment or a question down in the comment section, and I'm always going to get back to you. I always try and make it one of my things every single evening when I get home to reply to any comments on all the different platforms and stuff. Sometimes I'm not able to because there's lots of comments, but if it's a question or it's something very specific or something that interests me, I will definitely 100% get back to you. So please feel free to leave any comments. I am going to keep looking because I've got sort of some notes and stuff that I want to look at on my phone in front of me. I've got a weird setup today. So I've got a brand new 4K streaming camera that's been sent to me, which I'm trying out. So hopefully it all works. I look a little bit saturated, a little bit in color, but that's okay. That's all right. So I'm going to reflect on My Tennis Coach Academy. So just over about maybe 18 months ago, I had this vision of a coaching website, a coaching resource for coaches across the world to use to learn about ecological dynamics and constraint-led approach, but to mainly network and share ideas with other coaches. One of my biggest problems as a coach, or one of my biggest challenges, was always number one, trying to find reliable resources. And anyone who knows me, I've got a million tennis books. My phone is full of a million research papers and links and videos and screenshots. And everywhere I go, I'm taking pictures of notice boards and all kinds of stuff. And it's really difficult because I've got so much information, so much knowledge spread out over lots of different devices. I found it really difficult to sort of find stuff that I wanted very quickly, especially if I'm working day to day and trying to think of themes for lessons or inspiration for practice designs or just some fresh ideas. Or if I have half an hour just to sit down and watch a webinar. And what I found was I was just going through lots of different websites, sifting through a lot of rubbish and trying to uncover some gold. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if like you just had all these resources in one place? And especially with ecological dynamics, because ecological dynamics, especially in tennis, there's not a lot of content out there. It's getting better. There's more and more stuff coming out. The ITF are being really good. Great webinar a few months back on their platform, the ITF Academy. Good platform. Go check it out. But it's very difficult to get any information about ecological dynamics or practice designs. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to, one, have a resource for coaches that they can just go to. They know exactly what they're getting. They know it's, one, done by a coach, a practitioner, someone who's actually living and breathing coaching every single day. And two, it's someone from a little bit of authority, because I'm a coach educator. So I do work in coach education, coach development. So I try and make it quite key part of my work that I know what I'm talking about. So I do lots of research in the academic papers and stuff like that as well. So I thought, what would be great to have a resource. So that was the main sort of, I guess, inspiration, just having a resource for coaches. The second part that really inspired me was just trying to bring coaches together. And I did a video way back last summer and my YouTube kind of changed as well because it was quite a pivotal moment. I went to the PTR coaches conference. I was a keynote speaker, and I presented at the PTR conference. And Emma Wells, amazing conference by the way, sort of she set up this little Q&A at the end of the day with all the speakers and all the sort of coaches, and we just sort of sat around and had a couple of drinks, and they asked quite a few questions to the speakers. And one thing really stood out was how lonely and isolated tennis coaching is. And tennis coaches generally will work on their own. They won't work with anyone. So therefore, they've got no one to get inspiration from, no one to share challenges with, no one also to challenge them and sort of make them accountable. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had like this community of practice where coaches can share ideas and share clips of their lessons and share challenges and have a community where we all support each other. And it's interesting because I was talking to a trainee coach last week on a level 3 here in the UK, and they were saying that they come from real estate, and they were saying in that business it's really cutthroat. Like everyone will sort of just stab you in the back, and everyone looks out for themselves, and no one wants to share ideas or share best practice because it's just seen as a big competition community. And I was like, well, tennis coaching generally sometimes feels the same because generally we're all self-employed, so it's quite difficult to open up to a coach and say, "Oh, I'm having a real big challenge here. Like I'm really struggling with this player, or I'm really struggling with this parent, or the committee are really putting pressure on me on this area." Because a lot of tennis coaches think that's weakness. And if I ask for help, then people perceive that I don't know what I'm doing and I shouldn't be coaching. That imposter syndrome really kicks in. I felt that a lot. And even to this day, like sometimes like people see me as an authority and educator, and if I'm struggling with something, I'm sometimes hesitant to reach out and ask. I am getting better, and I've got a great network of people, both in tennis and now, which is great for me, outside of tennis as well. So I get different perspectives, but I understand it's quite tough to ask for help. There's also a confirmation bias within tennis of, well, I'm successful, so I don't need any help. So I don't need to enroll on a website, or I don't need to join a community of practice because I'm amazing. I'm super successful. And that's dangerous as well because like sometimes we are successful despite our methods, and you only have to look at traditional coaching. Like traditional coaching, some players have been very successful and grand slam winners, and they've been coached by drop feeding and basket feeding despite the limited progress that those those practices might have. They have been successful, so there's a confirmation bias there as well. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had this community of coaches where like we can just share ideas and share philosophies, and it's not a case of like come in and listen to me. It's a case of, well, I want to build this community. So it started off very much as a resource, and I put all my coach webinars on there. I developed some programs, some online courses. I think one of the most unique parts, and I know other coaches are now ripping me off on this, and fair play, it's a great idea. I filmed lessons. I filmed real lessons with real players, and I put them in the academy. And sometimes I would do like a director's commentary over the top saying, oh, this is what I was going after. This is what I was thinking. This is what I seen. And coaches really resonated with that because 99.9% of the content online is rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish. I'm not going to mention names, but like coaches in the south of France who do a 30-second reel where they change a grip and it automatically makes the player better. It's all staged, it's all fake. And I get it because it's marketing and it's business. Like the McDonald's Big Mac does not look the same in shop that you see it online. That's what marketing is. And the problem is with the vast majority of tennis social media is it's crap. It's not very good. And it's just all how to fix your forehand. This one tip will change your serve. And it's dross. And I don't blame coaches for doing that. Absolutely not. Like coaches want exposure, coaches want reach and follows, and especially now on social media, if you get a big social media following, you get lots of opportunities to travel around the world and get endorsements and sponsorship deals. So I don't blame coaches for that. But as a coach educator, like part of my passion was, well, I'm going to put out real content. I'm going to put out real science. And a lot of the time it comes across quite controversial and it comes across quite critical of traditional coaching. And I do that on purpose because unless we challenge each other, we're never going to get better. Like just saying, oh, drop feeding is really effective because X player has done it. Well, the science shows us it's not very effective. So therefore, if we do have an alternative method of coaching, then why can't we change it around? So it's that's the sort of main reason why I sort of started the platform. We do have some questions coming in, which is great. So I will be looking down. So apologies. I know eye contact is quite key on these things. But smart tennis and stringing, any advice tips for newly qualified level 4 tennis coach? Yes. And I'm going to give you the same advice when I pass my level 4. And my advice came from one of my coaching legends, Phil Layton. If you're a UK coach, you would have met Phil at some point. He's done lots of road shows for the LTA, schools, tennis, and stuff like that. Really good, charismatic scouser like myself, I guess. A lot of my coaching is definitely inspired by Phil. And the advice he gave me, which I'll give smart tennis and stringing, is now you're really going to learn how to coach. Like qualifications are great, and there's a lot of evidence and research out there. I think you will probably take away less than 10% of the course. Real coaching's done on the court. So this is where you really start your coaching journey. And I think for me, as a newly qualified level 4, is to keep pushing on and keep learning and keep developing. I would shadow lots of different coaches. I would research alternative coaching methods, and I would just keep trying to make myself a little bit better every single day. One of the biggest issues a lot of coaches have, I'm sure you won't have this, smart tennis and stringing. A lot of coaches qualify and they think that's it. Oh, I'm a level 4 coach. I've made it. That's it. Now I've stopped. I don't need to learn anymore. Tennis is always changing. There's always changes in psychology. There's always changing in the game itself. And what we're coaching today won't be the same in 10 years. And the players that we're coaching now, they're playing the game in 10 years. That's different. That will be different than today. So my advice is, okay, let's kick on and sort of really carry on your development and learning. And again, I always remember my drive instructor saying, once you pass your driving test, now you really learn how to drive. And I think that's the same. But congratulations on passing your level 4. I know firsthand that it's not easy. It's quite challenging now with a lot of different elements to the course. But well done. But keep pushing on, keep learning. But thanks so much for the question as well. So yeah, feel free to leave questions in the chat. So that's the background of my Tennis Coach Academy. And I think a big part of it for me was just that community of practice and coaches sharing ideas. And again, a bit like smart tennis and stringing there, I think coaches need each other. And I've worked with some big coaching teams, and sometimes it's quite toxic, where coaches are just chasing the same players that you're working with, and it's not easy. And I think tennis coaching, especially now when we have a lot of rival sports, pickleball, paddle, but other sports as well, tennis is in a very delicate position where players, children, adults, they have so many options now. So we need to push on and make sure that we are giving them the best possible tennis experience as well. So just going to go through a couple of lessons that I've learned over the past year from interacting with tennis coaches around the world. First and foremost, we all have the same problems. Like it's interesting because I'll speak to coaches from South America, Australia, Europe, North America, and we generally have all the same problems. And it's interesting because the problems that we talk about, they're not front and center in most coach education courses. So most coach education courses will be about knowledge about tennis or knowledge about coaching. A lot of real life coaching challenges have nothing to do with that. So the first thing that I learned very quickly is I had to make tennis coaching simpler. A lot of tennis coaches get hit with so much knowledge. And again, going back to the internet and social media, there's so much information around. So I try to make it really simple. And this was really highlighted recently on a level 3 that I was on. And the level 3 candidates were given lots of frameworks to follow to be a successful coach. And they were given a task to deliver a lesson to each other. And I reckon 98% of the group just got completely lost and confused in the structure. They didn't quite know what was coming next. They didn't quite know when to move on. And my reflection on it was, this is too complicated. Like tennis, it actually isn't that difficult, especially coaching. And I've talked about this in the past, like where I used to write all my lesson plans minute by minute in very, very fine detail of what I'm going to work on. Okay, I'm going to work on both back attacking today. This is my warm up. This is my close practice. This is my progression. This is my second progression. This is my constraint. Sorry, this is my game based or condition points. And I've write down minute by minute in very great detail what was going on. The issue was when I delivered the session, the player might have not achieved the success that I thought they would, or they achieved it too quick. But no matter what happened, I just stuck to my plan. And my lessons were quite boring and sometimes full of frustration. So the first thing that I've really tried to encourage coaches to do inside the academy is just make it dead simple. So tonight I've got an individual, I've got a red group, and I've got a orange group. I've got just a theme that I'm going to work on with each group based on the previous 5 or 6 weeks. So the individual, we're going to work on exploring space from the back of the court. The reds, we're going to explore return to serve, and the oranges, we're going to explore ball free. And that just ties in what we've been working on. I have a practice design for each one, but that's it. I don't have any progressions, don't have any progression to or condition points. I just have a theme. And what I'll do is I'll set up that initial practice and I'll just watch what happens, and I'll watch the behavior of the players. And then from there, we'll start just tinkering with the constraints. And for me, understanding how you can manipulate constraints, I'll talk about constraint-led coaching in a minute, it makes my coaching, one, a lot simpler. Two, the players understand a lot clearer more of the intention that I'm going. But for me as a coach, it's actually easier because I'm not thinking about always what's coming next or what technical point do I need to pull out here or what tactical point. It's just looking at the players and just allowing them to explore. And I can just take a step back and I can just watch their behavior and then just make a couple of interventions if needed to guide them to better solutions. And for me, that's an easier way of coaching rather than trying to follow this rigid plan. And it's interesting because, like, if we think about coach education and player developments, they're very similar in a traditional sense. Like, traditional sense, player development is we teach them the basics first and then we allow them to explore a bit later on. Coach education, very similar. We'll teach them the basics of coaching and then we'll allow them to explore a bit later on when they're more experienced. But I don't think that's the right idea. A bit like with player development, I think we should just make things simpler for coaches. And that's why I've got the new workshop happening with you, coach. So I've got a 6-day, well, would be a 7-date now, 7-date workshop, roadshow, if you want to call it a roadshow, tour. So it sounds quite fun. First ever tour. And it's all about designing an environment using the constraint-led approach and ecological dynamics. Like, how as coaches we design the environment to allow the players to develop better skills. And for me, using a constraint-led approach or ecological dynamics is definitely more simpler than a very complicated technical tactical framework, footwork framework. Then you've got your lesson plan framework. Like, you've got about 16, 17 frameworks to think about as a coach. Whereas my framework is dead simple. This is the theme. My job is to make the player better in that area. And there's multiple ways in which I can do it. So that's what I've put into the academy as a lot of my coaching. If you ever watch my lessons, they are ridiculously simple. But what you don't see is well, what you do see, but you might not notice, is just how I'm constantly manipulating the environment to guide the player to more success. And I find it more fun because I'm not stressed out. I'm not stressed because the player is not achieving what I think they are, or or the player is not following my plan. And it's something that I don't think I took for granted as a young coach. Tennis players are humans. They're not machines. Like, I'll have a lesson with you today and I can do the exact same lesson with you tomorrow and have a completely different outcome. Why? Because you're different tomorrow. I'll be different tomorrow. The environment's different tomorrow. Therefore, everything changes. And I think sometimes as tennis coaches, we have these rigid plans. And unless it's really, really catered for the players in front of you, those plans generally fall apart. uh, Jerome. I always don't know how to pronounce your name, Jerome. But yeah, we had a little chat on Instagram before on this. So Mondays, a lot of academies show their trophies from the weekend, as in like Trophy Town or Title Town. What are your thoughts? I really don't like those type of posts. I really find it quite disturbing that academies, clubs put player success front and center. And I get it; they're proud of the players, and they should be. Like winning trophies is good, and players are working hard in training, and that's a little bit of reward for the progress as well. The issue I have with it is twofold. Number one, it's all based on outcome. And I don't think at under 8 or under 9, under 10, winning a tournament really matters in the grand scheme of things. I really don't. I don't think winning at a young age group is that important. I think just playing the game. The issue I have with the social media posts is it really feeds the ego, one of the player and the parents. So yes, if you're successful, we'll put you front and center on our social media. It feeds the ego of the coach. Look how great I am, even though the coach hasn't won the trophy. Again, big believer of players win trophies, coaches don't. And it feeds the ego of the club as well. We build champions. Again, one website, I won't mention the name, the title header was "We Build Champions." I'm like, oh, it's such an egotistic thing to say. Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's ego based. For me, I would rather see pictures of the kids having fun and playing tennis at tournaments, no matter what the results. I know it's something that we've spoke about in my tennis center. Of if we're going to post pictures of players at events, we're not going to do the trophy way. We're going to show just kids playing and participating and learning and exploring the game. Yeah, I think it's a big ego thing. I love the Norway model where no one gets a medal, no one wins. You just play matches. I think that's the most important message. But yeah, good question. Probably get lots of hate for that. But yeah, not. It's definitely not for me. Jamal James, what? When would a young child 7 be ready to step into group sessions? Never stop doing group sessions. Again, I'm probably going to be the most anti-coach in the world here. So the question is, when should 7-year-olds stop group sessions and start doing one-to-ones? Never stop doing group sessions, and you don't need one-to-ones. So let me give some context. The issue of one-to-ones is they're completely fake. Like it's so fake, it's unreal. Like the coach, me, I'll just hit the ball in the same place for the player to achieve success. I will feed the perfect ball over and over again. The issue is tennis isn't perfect, it's imperfect, it's variable, it's chaotic. So when that 7-year-old goes and plays a match, when they're playing an opponent, the opponent is doing the exact opposite what a coach does. And no matter how we try as coaches, like I can't play like a 7-year-old, no matter how much I try. And some people say I do play like a 7-year-old, but it's fake. So therefore, the perception and the action skills that players develop in one-to-one sessions, they're not skills that transfer. And I was on a course recently, or on a course, I should say, with a coach, and they were saying, "Oh, playing against a beginner is really tough because it's really variable and it's chaotic. You don't know what you're going to get." If you look at the top players, they need lots of repetition, which is completely backwards, by the way. You don't. At the top level, there's more variability and there's more chaos than there is at beginner level. So, yeah, one-to-ones are good because I think it just gives a personal sort of touch, and you can cater and change the lesson based on the individual player. I don't think they're needed. I don't do many one-to-ones because I don't believe in one-to-ones. Group sessions for me are more beneficial. Why? Because they're hitting with the peers, they're hitting with the same age and stage of the player. They're getting the same ball that they need to develop at their level. So maybe that probably doesn't help. But yeah, I'm not big on one-to-ones. And one-to-ones are really expensive, which just blows my mind. Like if you can do I'll talk UK prices here, but a one-to-one with me, for example, is £50, which is really expensive. That includes a court fee, by the way. A group lesson is like 10 quid. You'll probably hit more balls in a group session. You'll hit with the same level of player. You'll get more variability. You'll get more play, depending on the coach, than you will in a one-to-one. So again, if I'm a parent, I'll probably do more more group sessions than one-to-ones. One-to-ones, again, you might have one a week if you want to really make a little bit quicker progress. But for me, yeah, I wouldn't stop doing groups. Great question, by the way, as well. Smart Tennis again. Any tips moving a player up to mini green who is definitely ready, but the parents won't because the younger brother does a tot session at the same time and doesn't want to change things? Oh, a real life tennis problem. So the question is, when can you move a player up to green, but the parents won't because they have a younger child in tots? Great question. I would just use a green ball with that player in that session. Again, I think within our tennis program, our coaching programs, we're too rigid. Like an orange session, we use just orange balls. Why? You can just use green balls in an orange session. I would allow that player to experiment with a green ball and a bigger court within that session. I don't think we have to constantly put players in these boxes of you're a red, you're orange, you're a green. So again, tonight, for example, my red session, we're playing on a court that's a little bit smaller than an orange court, and we're playing with an outdoor red ball. Sometimes we'll play with a sponge ball. My orange groups 2 weeks ago, we played on a green court with an orange ball. Like I will constantly change the environment, or I'll change the court constraints, the court sizes to meet the level of the players. Like I don't think we need to be so rigid. And I think that also then helps parents as well, because again, parents, they probably can't afford to come twice a week and travel and other sports and logistics. So you almost have groups within groups. For me, that's not a huge issue. Yeah, and I get why coaches don't think about it, because again, I spent 20 odd years not thinking about it as well. And it's just that rigid look of a program. And like I'm trying to work out how we can develop a non-linear program where players can move between ball colors. It's something that we've implemented at my tennis center quite well, where we'll just fluidly move players. But again, if you watch any of my sessions, Stuart Armstrong made this comment when I was on the talent equation this week. Like, if you ever look at any of my pictures, there's always courts within courts. Like my court shapes are constantly changing size, just to give the player a different look and a different feel. But yeah, I pronounced your own name perfect. Thanks, Joanne. I'm always conscious of trying to pronounce your name perfectly. Um, but on that note, with constraints, I think that's been my second biggest lesson with the academy as well. Like the use of constraints. And if you're not familiar with constraint-led approach, like we can manipulate the task, the environment, or the player. Now, a task constraint is just manipulating the rules of the game. So, like I said there, with smart tennis stringing, if I've got a older player in an orange group who I believe is ready for green but can't push on, I've got to make sure I give him the right level of challenge, because if the challenge isn't right, they're going to get bored. They get bored, they're going to leave. So if I've got a couple of players of my orange group who might be transitioning to green, or they can't go to green because of parent constraints in this case, just make the court bigger. Make the court bigger, give them a different ball. Again, same with adults. Like the amount of time I've got the green balls are for adults, because I want to slow things down. I want to change the game. I want to manipulate the task to get them to develop better skill. And sometimes there's a little bit of pushback from adults and parents. Like when I bring the green ball in and the orange parents go, "Oh, I don't think that's the right idea." It's like, well, you got to trust me. Like then I'm going after something quite specific. I think that's what's great about the constraint-led approach. It's non-linear. There's no structure to it whatsoever. So you can run your session based on what's in front of you. And I think to me, that's the art of coaching. It's not coaching this very predictive and linear syllabus. It's looking at what's in front of you. And like again, my reds tonight, I might go there tonight. We might use an outdoor red heavy felt ball, but I may look and it's just not working. Okay, we'll get that felt ball in. We'll bring it back to sponge for today, because if we bring it back to sponge, we might achieve the task or the intention. And I think for me, that's what tennis coaching is. It's manipulating. I think sometimes with ball colors and court sizes and racket sizes, even the rules itself, we just get caught in believing we have to deliver that way. So again, I'll give you another real life example here about how I manipulated constraints last night with a player. So I had a player last night, individual. So I did do an individual last night, and it was she's just transitioned from green to yellow. So she turned 11 yesterday. Even though she could have played yellow ball from January, we made the decision to leave it 5 or 6 weeks with the green because she's not that tall. Her skill level and experience of tennis is still improving. So we just felt, well, you know what, we'll stick with green because we're getting some success and we're making progress where we want. But it was a birthday yesterday, and she said to me, "Can we use some yellow ball?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely, fine." So I brought the yellow balls in, and in the warm up, I said, "Well, because the ball's going to be quicker and bouncing higher, you can have up to 3 touches. So if you feel comfortable, you can hit the ball back after 1 touch, or if you need to take a second or possibly third touch, then you can." And she's like, "Oh, okay, that's great." And what we found, because I gave her just that very simple constraint, task constraint of taking multiple touches, one, she relaxed quite quickly. And two, she started to make decisions. So when she felt comfortable, she hit it after one bounce and 1 touch with 1 touch. When she felt under a little bit of pressure, she took a second touch. When she was under lots of pressure, she took up to 3 touches. And what I found was, one, she made very few mistakes. Two, she started to read the ball flight and the bounce, and she's sort of getting comfortable with it. And she started to recalibrate her movements on the quicker ball. She started to recalibrate her court position. So she started moving further back. And I'm not saying that, oh my God, look at me, I'm an amazing coach, but just giving the player the autonomy and the freedom. One, she made a choice, by the way, as well, whether to take 1, 2, or 3 touches. But two, just by changing the very simple task constraint, allowed her to get used to this ball and allowed her to explore this brand new quick tennis ball. And she got success straight away. If I would have done that session 4 or 5 years ago, before I found the constraint-led approach, ecological dynamics, I just would have went straight yellow ball, 1 touch. She would have made loads of mistakes. I would have just shouted loads of technical information at her. She would have felt really bad and lost lots of confidence. She would have felt that she's not good enough. I would have felt that she's not good enough at yellow, and both of us would have left quite frustrated. But having this look of ecological dynamics and understanding that, okay, well, she's going to have to adapt here. She's going to have time to recalibrate her movement. She's going to have time to find a new movement solution. I just allowed her by just giving her that simple task constraint. And again, that's something that I really push it within the academy. It's like, we need, again, my sort of message there to Smart Tennis and Stringing is just manipulate the constraints, change the game. And I've done it loads over the past 5, 6 weeks. Like, tram lines are in on the return. Tram lines are in on the serve. Like, if you ever have tennis players who are struggling to get a serve in, make that space bigger. And people say to me, "Yeah, but that's not real though, is it, Steve? Like, by making the space bigger, you're teaching them something that they're not going to need." You'd be surprised, by opening and widening that service box, how many serves start to go in, because you take a degree of pressure off the player and they start to experiment by sort of going for different areas, just manipulating how the court feels. It's interesting with perception, because when you have a low level of skill or a low level of experience, that service box looks really small. Therefore, you get really tight and nervous. So all I'm doing is I'm making that service box look bigger, and that just gives them a little bit more freedom. We talk about degrees of freedom with Bernstein. Like, a beginner will freeze how they move because they are starting to learn a movement solution. But by giving them that bigger space, I'm just freeing up those degrees of freedom. So that's a second lesson I've learned a lot. And the great thing about the academy and me is, like, everything great thing about me sounds really egotistic, but the great thing, what I believe is a good thing, all the stuff that goes in the academy, it's stuff that I'm doing on a daily basis. It's just stuff that I'm practicing on the court. It's stuff that I'm delivering. I'm filming sessions. Again, it's with real players. It's not like a national governing body video where it's beginners and they're all walking in full in Babolat gear and brand new Babolat shoes and 4 rackets. And, like, these kids aren't beginners. They're literally regional level players pretending to be beginners. And some of the lessons go wrong. Like I put a lesson up the other week where it doesn't quite go to plan. And the same player that I'm talking about just now with the yellow ball, I did a session with her. She's struggling in the session. I'm like, yeah, that's good because we need a little bit of struggle as well. So it is the Academy's birthday today. So if you are listening, I will leave a link down below if you want to join the Academy. If you use birthday one, you'll get $100 off the annual fee and you'll get a 30-minute one-to-one session with me as well. So head over to mytenniscoaching.com, click on my academy, and that's in there for you as well. So yeah, feel free to keep asking questions stuff if you are watching. We do have a few people watching live, which is great. Thank you so much. Or if you are watching the replay, feel free to leave it down below. And I think lesson sort of number 3 for me with the Academy is just the power of community. And it's great because me and Jerome have chats on Instagram. My WhatsApp is just ridiculous these days. I've got so many different WhatsApp groups. And it's not just people saying to me, well, how can you fix this? It's just people sharing ideas and sharing challenges as well. And that's why I quite like these live streams, because I think it's good opportunity for the great questions I've had today, just to share some ideas. And again, I'm not saying my way is the way. It's just trying to help other coaches out from, again, Smart Tennis Stringham has an issue with moving players up. We have a great question about one-to-ones and group sessions. Oh, Jerome, that's a great question. What are the moments or situations you go explicit? I haven't gone explicit in my coaching for a long, long time. And I try and avoid it as much as possible because I know once I give explicit instructions, it really hurts the learning. It really impacts the learner's experience. It's a bit like giving the answers to a test. And the problem is, as tennis coaches, we don't actually have the answers because everyone we coach is unique. Everyone sees the world differently. Everyone has different physical and psychological skill, experience, and levels. So what I say to you might not actually work as a player. I might give an opinion, and a lot of the time I might say, in my opinion. The only time I'd ever go explicit is if a player's really, really stressed and I would say they're drowning in a very sort of example. So if a player's really like they're really stressed, their stress and anxiety levels are super high, they're just really emotional, then I might give them a explicit cue or just give them a answer to go and explore, because you don't want kids to struggle or players to struggle at sort of a level where they start to get really emotional. It hasn't happened for a long time. I always try and make sure that I'm quite, what's the word, emotional intelligent. So because I'm always looking at the behavior of the player, I can almost preempt when they're getting a little bit stressed. Goes back to that video I put on the academy the other week with the young girl. She's getting emotional, and I sort of stopped the session, and I put the clip on Instagram as well, and said like, well, at the minute I'm squeezing you, and you're a lemon. What do you get if you squeeze a lemon? It says juice. What do you make out of lemon juice? Lemonade. So there has to be moments that there has to be a fine line between giving the player some challenge. But if she was to get really emotional, then I would probably just give her an answer. But I avoid it. I avoid it really, really like the plague. Because once I give that explicit instruction, I know it's going to harm potential learning. But yeah, great question. And it's just, I think it's something as coaches that we have to get across to parents as well, that explicit nature, because parents, especially in 2025, they do what I call helicopter parenting, to quote the High Performance podcast. Jake Humphreys called it once in a great podcast with, I can't remember the guy's, Nick something from Man United, but helicopter parenting. So when players are under challenge, parents jump in and rescue, and they give solutions because they think that's what the player needs. But when you're on a match court and you're playing a match and it's not working, no one's there to rescue you. You've got to rescue yourself. And I think coaches do that a lot as well. They jump in too quick. They jump in with quote unquote a solution. Again, we don't know if it's a solution. It's just an opinion. And the problem is players then become dependent on it. And I see it a lot with players. I can tell a player who's been coached very explicitly because they'll be constantly looking at the coach. After every mistake, they'll look at the coach. After every error, they will look at the balcony to the parent. They're constantly looking for help. They just want help, help, help. And it's no good because these players generally are the most emotional. They'll be crying, they'll be smashing a racket on the floor because they're not getting the help and support they need in competition. So yeah, long-winded answer, but I try and avoid being explicit. I'm hopefully going to do it every week. So every week at 10 a.m. these lives. So great question, Smart Tennis. How often do these lives? Every week will be the plan going forward. Not next week because it's half term here in the UK. I'm having a week off tennis. But from the following week, it'll be every single week. We'll jump on ask questions as well. But I'm always open to questions on Instagram at My Tennis Coaching. So if you want to drop me a message there, you're more than welcome as well. I think that's the most important part. And the reason why I set up not just the academy, but the YouTube was to connect and talk and share ideas with other coaches. And I think I've learned more over the past 4 years just talking to coaches. And that's not just in tennis. I'm quite lucky in many regards now because I've got such a big network of people that I talk to coaches from lots of different sports, from football, soccer, if you're one of my American followers, basketball. Yesterday, I had a huge influx of jiu-jitsu practitioners who followed my Instagram. And shout out to Raphael, who I know is in the Talent Equation Guild, who I talk to quite a bit. He gave me a shout out, and I had loads of other coaches. The workshop that I've got coming up for you, coach, I've had squash coaches, badminton coaches, paddle coaches get in touch asking can they come on to the course because they want to learn more about the constraint-led approach because it's becoming a bit more popular. There's definitely a movement. There's a shift happening within coaching across all different sports to a more ecological dynamics inspired coaching. I think that's the power of community. And I think I've learned more over the past 4 years by networking. And a shout out to Matt Wiggum, if he's watching. Me and Matt, who is a coach developer in Australia, we literally send each other 8 to 10 voice messages every single day about various different bits of research, generally research around decision making at the moment. We're deep in the weeds and research papers, and we're sharing ideas. This week, we reached out to Sean Malcolm. Again, shout out to Sean Malcolm about decision making. He was great because he sent us his opinions on email. And I've got a network of coaches, and every single day I'm just talking to coaches about challenges or solutions or best practice. And again, that's one of the reasons why I set up the YouTube channel to try and get some of my messages across, but also the academy as well. So what's next for My Tennis Coaching and My Tennis Coach Academy? We're going to do these lives. So Smart Tennis Ring and these lives every Friday during term time here in the UK. I will advertise them a bit better. Today was a bit spontaneous just because it's the academy birthday. It's my coaching anniversary, I guess, 22 years. So we're going to do these lives. In terms of the academy itself, we do monthly live calls with the members and we have guest speakers. So this month, next week, I've got Howard Green from Super Movers, strength and conditioning coach, very tennis specific strength and conditioning coach. He's going to come into the academy. He's going to do a live Zoom. He's going to present some of his Super Movers ideas on integrated shapes in tennis and how we can train them from a strength and conditioning point of view. I'm going to give some insights how that transfers onto the match court. And we have them every single month. We had Mark Bullock come on and do an inclusive talk. Matt Wiggum, who I just talked about, he came in and talked about working with adult beginners from a constraint-led approach. Tom Littlewood come in and did a great talk on business and how to make sure your what's the word I'm looking for? Your sales funnel, I guess, is sort of streamlined to bring players in. I'm just going to have a sip of my drink because I'm getting a bit of a dry throat. So we have those monthly calls each and every month, and we've got some big hitting coach educators coming as well. I'm not going to start putting some names out yet because I've not confirmed dates and times, but I've got some big hitting guests coming in. I think it's great because one of the things I'm worried about the academy at the moment, it's just me. I'm just presenting my content. But once a month, these guest speakers come in and they deliver their content, which is great. I am hopefully going to have a virtual coaches conference just for academy members as well. So again, bringing in a number of coaching experts and they'll deliver content a bit like this. People can interact and ask questions as well. That's coming inside the academy. Obviously, you're going to have more content inside the academy as well, with myself delivering more content. We're definitely going to do a social media course. I get so many questions about social media. How do you develop your social media? How do you edit your videos? What equipment do you need? So I'm going to do a little mini course on that. What I'm really excited about, which I'm still planning, I'm going to do a beginner's constraint-led approach course. So I'm going to coach a complete beginner, never played tennis before, and I'm going to show coaches how you can coach a complete beginner using the constraint-led approach. One of the biggest pushbacks I get is, yeah, but you work in performance, you can do it with those players because they can play tennis. I'd love to see you do it with a red stage player who's never picked up a racket. I'm like, well, it's probably easier, to be honest. So I'm actually going to show it. I'm going to film it. I'm going to put it into a course. That's going to go into the academy for academy members as well. And hopefully the community side of the academy will start to grow. One of the biggest issues I have, or challenges as tennis coaches, are very introvert. We have imposter syndrome. I know I am both. And we don't like sharing our own content. So we have a community area where I want coaches to upload their games and their drills and their practices. At the minute, I think only 2 coaches have done it. Pardon me. But I want coaches to use that space to put in drills because I can learn from it as well. And Simon Yap, hopefully Simon will watch this as well. Simon put a great practice in there with use of different nets. And I was like, oh, I really like that idea. I'm going to bring it into my coaching. So I want the academy to grow, not just my content or experts, speakers content. I want it to grow as a community of practice because there's no right or wrong way to do a drill or game or practice. Like it all depends on the players that you have in front of you. And it's something that I've been quite aware of. Like I know I've released a couple of books, but those books are great for my players because they've been built and designed for my players. So they work for my players. I think with drills and practices, you can use them as inspiration, but my drills will not work for your players. And it's something that I'm conscious of with content. That's why you won't see a lot of my drills on social media because they won't work for your players. And coaches do it because it's a social media frenzy and people think that drills are what's needed to produce players. Drills don't produce players. Coaches don't really produce players. Environments do. And that's, again, a big topic for the You Coach workshop in a few weeks is how do you create that environment? And a lot of my stuff that you'll see within the academy is me creating environments that hopefully makes more and better players. But let me know if you are a academy member or if you're interested in potentially joining the academy but haven't quite made that leap of faith. What would you like to see in the academy? What would you like to see in future live streams here on YouTube? What topics would you like me to discuss next week? I've already pre-recorded next week's stream because it's half term. It's on the LCA player pathway, performance pathway. If you're on Instagram, you know I've got some strong feelings on this yesterday. So I did a 20-30 minute talk yesterday on that. But let me know what you'd like to see in these future live streams. But I've really enjoyed today. Thanks so much for people who've left some questions and stuff as well. That's why I wanted to set this up, to get some interaction and get some questions. And yeah, last but not least, that's about it for me. So we're just under 50 minutes. I did plan to keep this under an hour. I'm just happy that I got some questions and stuff. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening. If you have watched it on the replay, feel free to leave any questions down below in the comment section. If you are new here to the channel, please subscribe, and it really helps. My channel is growing very slowly. YouTube is possibly the hardest social media platform I've ever been on, just to get reach and get people to engage and get the algorithm to get your stuff out. But check out my other videos as well. I'm putting a lot of effort and time into YouTube this year. Invest a lot in kit and equipment and lighting and stuff like that to make myself look youthful. But thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for all the questions. And if you are in the UK, enjoy your half term, and I'll see you live 10 a.m. London time in 2 weeks' time. Speak soon.